Your attitude assumptions about money is going to affect how much money you're going to have. If you believe you're only worth a certain amount, then it's kind of like your thermostat's set for that. And anything above that, you're going to self-sabotage to be able to get to that place, right?
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a very, very, very special edition of the Money Mondays. I have one of my favorite humans on the planet here, sitting 3 feet away from me to my right. We have Mr. Jim Kwik. He is an author, a podcaster, a brain coach. He helps you with your memory and everything in between. Please give a warm round of applause to Mr. Jim Kwik.
So good to be here, guys. I've been looking forward to this. And congratulations on the success of the show. Well-deserved.
Thank you. Well, the ratings are going to go up today, guys, because you're going to get so many actionable points. I mean, my wife has read every one of your books. I read your books. I listened to your episodes. You make them so short and sweet. It's easy for people to consume, digest, 10, 15, 20 minute. Bam.
They're quick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you spell that?
KWIK. TM. Thank you.
And so we're going to get into Jim's company called Kwik Learning, talk about his books. He's got a book coming out. Is it this year or next year?
In November.
Yeah. Okay, we're definitely getting into that. The cover of Entrepreneur Magazine, my favorite freaking magazine there is. We are the #1 entrepreneur podcast for 26 days in a row.
Yeah, you are.
Hopefully when this comes out, we're still #1 at that time. We got to keep, we're fighting with 800-pound gorillas, so we got to, keep our game up. But yes, Jim is on the cover of Entrepreneur Magazine. That is freaking amazing. And we are co-hosted with The Real Tarzan. This gentleman gets over 200 million views a month on his social media, focusing on animal contact, animal preservation, helping animals, and helping you understand how you can help animals. Please give a warm round of applause to Tarzan. All right, guys. So as you know, we keep these episodes very focused at 40 minutes because the average commute is 45 minutes and the average gym workout is around 45 minutes also. So we make these 40-minute episodes to make it easy for you guys to get in and out, listen to our guests, and some of our guests like Jim Kwik. Hopefully we'll get back multiple times throughout the years so we can keep giving you more information. What we're going to do is to cover 3 topics. How do people make money? How do they invest money? And how do they give it away to charity? We're going to have a special twist today because Jim is also going to talk about how you can invest into yourself and especially invest into your brain. So what we're going to do is give a quick 2-minute bio so we can get straight to the money.
Let's do it. So my name is Jim Kwik of Kwik Learning, and I help people to learn quickly. Kwik really is my last name. I didn't change it to do what I do. My destiny is pretty much planned out. I had to be a runner back in school, which is a lot of pressure when it says Kwik right on your shirt. I have to be careful when I'm driving because the worst name to have in your driver's license is Kwik because you're not going to talk your way out of that speeding ticket. boom, boom, boom. And I get to do my mission in life, which is teaching people how to learn quicker. I think the #1 skill to master in the 21st century for success is our ability to learn quickly. Your ability to learn rapidly and translate that learning into action is the ultimate competitive advantage in an age of information. The faster you can learn, the faster you can earn, because knowledge today is not only power, knowledge is profit. And so I believe 2 of the most costly words in business are I forgot. I forgot to do it. I forgot to bring it. I forgot that meeting. I forgot what I was going to say. I forgot that conversation. I forgot that person's name. But on the other side, memory can make you money. When you can remember client information, product information, give speeches without notes, remember what you read, facts and figures. You could give sales presentation. You could do so much, and it's a real force multiplier in your life. So yeah, I believe it not just financially. That's obvious, but all the treasures of life. When I speak at your events and I do these demonstrations where maybe I'll memorize a room full of people's names or they'll spit out numbers or 100-digit numbers or words and I'll recall them forwards and backwards. I always tell people I don't do this to impress you. I do this to express you what's possible because the truth is every single person listening to this, regardless of your age, your background, your career, education level, your financial situation, your gender, history, IQ, we could all do this. We just weren't taught. I believe there's no such thing as a good or bad brain. There's a trained brain and an untrained brain. There's no such thing as a good or bad memory. There's a trained memory and untrained memory. But unfortunately, in the school system, much like financial independence, financial literacy, they don't teach these things in school. And I think one of the most important things that should have been taught in school is learning how to learn. There's no class called focus, concentration. But if your listeners, if they're entrepreneurial, they're traders, whatever they happen to do, you need to be able to think rapidly, right? Maintain your focus, your concentration, be able to solve problems as an entrepreneur, which is really, why we do what we do. But your mind is your #1 wealth building asset. The challenge is it doesn't come with an owner's manual. It's not user friendly. So we talk about upgrading, our technology, our apps, our computers, our phones. But when's the last time we had a conversation about upgrading the most important technology that has created all technology, which is the human brain? So that's why I write the books, the podcasts, I speak. I'm on a mission. I grew up with learning difficulties. You guys know this. I had a traumatic brain injury when I was 5 years old. And because of it, I had learning difficulties. I had processing issues. I couldn't read. It took me 3-4 years to learn how to read compared to the other kids. And it was hard on your identity, in terms of how you saw I saw myself. I was 9 years old. I was slowing down the class. A teacher came to my defense because I was being teased, but pointed to me in front of the whole class and said, "That leave the kid alone. That's the boy with the broken brain." And I was like, wow, I didn't know I had a broken brain. And so I've dedicated my life on how to be able to upgrade my brain. And then once I had these skills around age 18, I started to turn it into my career. I started to make money. I took, my mess, I turned it into my message, because the universe has a sense of humor. My two biggest challenges were learning and public speaking, because I never knew the answers, never wanted the spotlight. And, but now what do every day? I public speak on this thing called learning, because I'm so passionate about it. I think it's the number one way people could transform their life, their finances, their health, their relationships, and so much more. I do believe that everything is figure outable, and if you lean into the power of your own mind, it's not how smart you are, it's how are you smart. And we all have these gifts of genius that we could translate into prosperity.
So when people hear their name, there's some type of either serotonin or some type of feeling that comes about when someone remembers their name or says their name out loud. Why is it important for people to remember other people's names?
In life, and especially in business, because how are you going to show somebody? I mean, we all have relationships with human beings, and influence and persuasion is so very important if you want to sell something, an idea, to be an ambassador for an advocate for something, if you want to sell your product or service, if you want to get investor funds. And so how are you going to show somebody you're going to care for their finances, their future, their health, their family, whatever you have to offer them, if you don't care enough just to remember their name, right? They say a name is the sweetest sound to a person's ears, that people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. But what's the message we send to somebody when we forget their name? That they're not important or that we don't care about them. So it doesn't matter what you say after that, right? And so, I think it's the number one business etiquette, certainly networking skill that there is. And there's simple things that people could do to remember people's names. I always remind people, remember your mom, M-O-M. It's just kind of just a simple mnemonic. The M, well, actually, I'll say this. Let's say, I imagine a lot of your listeners forget people's names. You meet somebody, you get their name, a second later, their name just disappears out of your mind. Or you're at an event, somebody taps you on your shoulder, you turn around, you see someone you recognize.
Hey, you.
Yeah, and then you do that, right? And you start you start giving them nicknames, or you're in a position you have to introduce these people.
Right.
It's embarrassing.
Hey, John, meet.
Yeah. And you come up with all these little hacks to be able to do it. And what makes it worse is when that person has the audacity to remember your name.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And especially the two of you, because, people know who you are, right? They follow you on social media, and you don't know if you met them.
Right.
And so something simple is like, imagine there was a suitcase of $1 million cash. If you just remember the name of the next stranger you meet. Now, I'm talking to all the listeners here, or the viewers, if they're watching this on video. Who's going to remember that name if they get all that money? Everybody, right?
Literally everybody.
And so it has nothing to do with their capabilities. It had everything to do with whether they wanted to or not. So the first M in mom stands for motivation. Really do a motivation check. Ask yourself, on a scale of 0 to 10, how much do I want to remember the person's name? Or why do I want to remember this person's name? Maybe it's to show the person some respect. Maybe it's to do a deal, get a referral, practice these things I learned, on the Money Monday podcast, right? And if you just come up with one reason, you're more likely to remember it, because you don't remember all names, but you sure as heck don't forget all names. I mean, you remember names that you're motivated. Some people you're attracted to, you're going to remember them, right? People that could be good for your business, you're going to remember them because they stand out. So again, reasons reap results. Things have to go from I realize when it comes to money or any kind of wealth, things have to go from your head to your heart to your hands. Meaning you could visualize and have goals in your head for what you want to achieve in your life, financially and otherwise. But if you're not acting consistently with your hands, you're not going to get it, right? Usually what we have to check in with is the second H, which is the heart. Right? What's the heart? The emotions, because we're not logical, right? People don't buy logically, they buy what? Emotionally, and they justify logically, because we are not logical, but we are biological. Mm-hmm. You mentioned serotonin, dopamine, oxytocin, endorphins. We are this feeling chemical soup. And so how do we tap into more of those feelings? We remember things that make us feel a certain way. Even at events, to be able to stand out, it's not just what you know. That's why we teach people accelerated learning and speed reading and memory but it's also who you know. But it's not even that. It's also who knows you, right? And who remembers you, and how do you stand out, and Maya Angelou, one of my favorite people that, I love their, her work, and just said, she says, like, people won't remember what you say, they won't remember what you did, but they'll always remember how you made them feel. The key to a long-term memory is information by itself is forgettable, but information tied with emotions become absolutely unforgettable, because you have part of your middle brain, and what's connected in there is your amygdala and your hippocampus. The hippocampus stores memory, right? And the amygdala is a switching station for emotions. But it's interesting how your emotions and memory are connected in your brain. And so, we remember things that stand out in our minds, that touch us emotionally. I bet many of you listeners could, there's a song that take you back to when you're a teenager. You could just hear one or two notes, or maybe a fragrance or a food that take you back to when you're a kid. So the first thing to remember names, tap into your emotions, tap into your motivation, your motive for action. The O in mom, very simple, observation. Most people, they think they forget things. They forget a name because they blame their retention. It's not your retention. Usually it's your attention. So the O is observing the name. One of the stories I share in the book is the second time I met President Bill Clinton. I was at a charity event. It was like 2,000 people, and I got to go to my assigned seating. I was the first one there. And after I sat down, Forrest Whitaker sits right next to me. A big Forrest Whitaker fan. Right next to him, Richard Branson, and then Ashton Kutcher, and then Ashton Kutcher's twin brother. And then about 20 minutes into it, President Clinton is right next to me. And we had met years before, very, very briefly. And when he sat down, he called me by name. He said hello to me by name. And I was just like, wait. And then I was like, okay, of course he knew who's sitting at his table. And then he picks up a conversation that we had a couple years earlier. And I was like, nobody was privy to that conversation. And I was like, dude, I'm the memory guy. Right. I need to know how you're doing this. Right. And he tells me this story in Arkansas with his grandfather in the living room, would tell stories and to all the kids. But afterwards, he's a very smart man. He would quiz each of the children to see if they were paying attention. Right. And so he learned very early on to really listen and be present. And I realized when he's explaining this to me, I felt this eerie feeling. You ever with somebody and they're just like really focused on you? Like, even though there's many more people in that room that are more important than me, certainly at that table more important than me, but I felt like I was like the only one. And I got goosebumps even just saying that. I call them truth bumps. But I think his incredible memory and his powerful presence with people is the secret is he's powerfully present with people. He has this powerful presence, but his powerful presence and his memory comes from being powerfully present. And who could do that? We could all do that, right? But most of the times when we're at events, right, at elevator night or whatever, but sometimes we have the habit of looking over people's shoulders, or maybe you've been at the, at the receiving end of this, where people, they're not listening. They're looking around, seeing who's more important, and they're not listening. They're thinking about how they're going to respond, or they're waiting for their turn to speak. Right. So I would say the O is observation, just really observe, pay attention. And finally, the final M in mom, those are the methods, right? Those are the methods in the books, the podcasts, and online courses. We built an online academy. We have students in 195 nations teaching accelerated learning. Because I think if there was a genie could grant you any one wish, but only one wish, what would you wish for? Limitless wishes, right? You ask for more wishes. But if I was your learning genie and I could help you become an expert, and I think we are in this expert economy where everyone who's listening to this, none of you are paid mostly for your muscle power like it was 100 years ago. It's your mind power. It's no longer your brute strength. Today, it's your brain strength, right? But how are we investing in our own mind when we're talking about earning a living and building a legacy? And so we really focus on these aspects. The methods are out there. We build this academy. I have students in every country in the world teaching the art of accelerated learning. Because if I was your learning genie and I could help you become an expert in any one subject or skill, what would the equivalent be of asking for limitless wishes? What would you want to learn? You'd be an expert in money, be an expert in martial arts. Or if you're an expert, I think, in learning how to learn, what can you apply that to? Money, martial arts, marketing, management, Mandarin. Everything gets so much easier when you could focus and concentrate and understand and read faster and remember and mostly apply, which is the big thing. So many people, listen to podcasts, or they go to your events, or they read a book and nothing changes. Like people buy books and they sit on their shelf and it becomes shelf help, not real self-help, because people don't actually take the action, which is the other power thing. Knowledge not alone is not power. Knowledge times action equals a lot of power, without a doubt.
What is the website for that, for the training?
So it's quickbrain.com, kwikbrain.com. We offer a suite of programs on quick focus, quick confidence, quick reading, quick recall, and they're all skills that I think we should have been taught back in school. That makes everything else easier. Like they teach you 3 R's in school: reading, writing, arithmetic. Obviously, spelling wasn't one of them. But what about recall? What about retention? Socrates said there is no learning without remembering. So it's so very important.
Limitless.
Limitless.
Walk us through.
Limitless. Yeah, this is a book all about meta learning. Meta learning is the art and science of learning how to learn. And so there are chapters in there on focus, on achieving flow, like the flow states, when you're in the zone. I'm sure when you're with wild animals and creatures, you have to be, you lose your sense of self, you lose your sense of time, you lose everything's almost effortless. Like somebody on the field, some of your guests that you've had in the past, like Chandler and others that have to be in their best. So I'm getting in the zone, how to study technical information and learn it in half the time, how to read faster. And really, I really think the key, Limitless is not about being perfect. It's about advancing and progressing beyond what you believe is possible. And there are 3 keys to becoming limitless for everyone that's listening. And these are the 3, and I really think they're the only 3. It's your mindset, your motivation, and the methods. If you aren't advancing, you feel limited in some area. Maybe it's your wealth, your income, your impact. You feel like you're in a box. That box is 3-dimensional. So by its nature, the 3 forces that contain you are also the same 3 forces that will liberate you and get you unstuck. I believe those 3 forces are the 3 M's of the Limitless model, which is your mindset, your motivation, and your methods. Meaning your mindset are the set of assumptions and attitudes you have about something. Your attitude assumptions about money is going to affect how much money you're going to have. If you believe you're only worth a certain amount, then it's kind of like your thermostat's set for that. And anything above that, you're going to self-sabotage to be able to get to that place, right? Your mindset about not only money, but yourself, what you believe is possible. Do you believe it's possible for you to have a big business or have a million followers on social media? Do you believe it's possible to be able to be a good public speaker or an investor? It's not only what you believe is possible, it's also what you believe you're capable of, and also what you believe you deserve also as well. So that's your mindset. Even when it comes to remembering names, your brain is this incredible supercomputer, and your self-talk is the program it will run. So if you tell yourself, I'm not good at remembering names, you will not remember the name of the next person you meet because you program your supercomputer not to. So that's the mindset. But somebody can have a limitless mindset, believe they're capable of it, they deserve it, and still be stuck in that box for making money or learning or whatever because they're not motivated to get out of that box. And I'll give everybody right now a 3-part secret, 3-part elements for a formula for limitless motivation. For those of you who have self-sabotage issue, that's a mindset thing. If you procrastinate, that's a motivation issue. You need P times E times S3. Purpose times energy times small, simple steps will give you limitless motivation, meaning the P is purpose. So let's say you want somebody to read, right? If people have seen pictures of me on social media with Oprah or Elon or Richard Branson, whoever, people ask how we bonded. And most of them, we bonded over books. Like you read to succeed. Leaders are readers. If somebody has decades of experience they put into a book and you could sit down and read that book in a few days, you could download decades into days. Mm-hmm. You could have an MBA, a PhD. You could, most people read 2 books a year, but what if you could read 1 book a week even? That's right. 52 books a year. That will make you an expert in any kind of area. So we actually put a free today, a masterclass on speed reading. Everyone's for free. It'll show you how to double your reading speed, everybody. And this is important for business because most of us spend about 4 hours a day reading. You think about proposals, business plans, emails, books, whatever, news media, social media. If you could just double your reading speed, you save 2 hours a day. Wow. What's 2 hours a day over the course of a year?
700 hours.
Yeah, exactly. And even if somebody just saves 1 hour a day over the course of a year, that's 365 hours. How many 40, I know most people work more than 40-hour work weeks. That's 9 40-hour work. That's 2 months of productivity. Mm-hmm. You get back something doing ubiquitous like reading. The reason I do so much training at places like Facebook, Nike, Google, Virgin Galactic, what have you, is because 4 hours are spent reading. That means their employees, that means half their salary is being paid to read, right? Wow. I mean, human capital is the most underutilized asset that a team has, a company organization has. Because they aren't shown how to learn. But if you could raise the collective intelligence, but the largest line item is payroll. And so like, are you getting the most out of your team in terms of what they're capable of, their potential and their power?
What is the second book? You have another book coming out in November.
Yeah, so this is about something called brain types, and I'm really excited about this. I call it the brain code, CODE, and everything is always a mnemonic. And I've realized that when people have questions, they submit it, they text us, they email us, social media, whatever. They're always the same. People want to know how to learn faster, right? They want to read faster. They want to be able to study better, achieve more in their career, start a business because they need to learn AI. Like, how do they learn this, right? And I realized that everyone's a little different. That it's not how smart you are; it's how are you smart. And we're all smart in different ways. And so I pulled from the sciences and the psychology of multiple intelligence theory, left brain, right brain dominance, introvert, extrovert, Myers-Briggs, and so many inspiring different theories out there. And I created for everybody who's listening a brain assessment that only takes 5 minutes. But when you do and go through it, it'll reveal something about yourself, because I really think success is having the curiosity to know yourself and then the courage to be yourself. You need to know yourself, your own beliefs, your values, what makes you unique, your strengths, your weaknesses, and embrace those things. So that's what makes you, those are your superpowers. So I've delineated these 4 cognitive types on how people learn and live, and I created animals. I just got an amazing tour of your ranch, with the 2 of you and looking at all the amazing animals, and I just it's just mind blowing what you're creating from the power of your vision. And so the animals we chose are CODE, the code. The C is the cheetah. And these are the learners that they're fast acting. They're cheetahs, right? They're fast, they're intuitive. They thrive in fast-paced work environments and markets, right? Even in what they're investing. And so they operate differently than the O's. The O's are your owls, and the owls are very logical. They love data, facts, figures, formulas. They lean into logic. And so they invest differently. They buy differently. They market differently. They learn differently. The D in code are your dolphins, and these are your creative visionaries. These are people who have really great visual spatial intelligence. They pattern recognition. They see patterns, I think patterns of genius, if you will. And then finally, the E are your elephants. And these are your collaborators. They have high empathy, right? And they like working with teams also. And so you take this quiz, and you go to mybrainanimal.com. Mybrainanimal.com. Tens of thousands of people have gone through it. We just released it literally this month. And when you're done in a few minutes, you'll get a detailed report based on your specific animal brain type, and how you could apply it towards learning, towards remembering, towards studying, towards living, towards work. And even I give you careers that you will excel at based on your brain type. I give you historical references and famous people who also share that brain type. And then we tell stories on how you could create creating teams with these 4 different archetypes. So that way you could be absolutely unstoppable.
So Tarzan's in Australia, he's in the jungle.
Yes.
And there's a humongous snake staring at him. And he only has a few seconds to decide, is this an anaconda? Is this a rattlesnake? Is this big, small, poisonous or not? What are some tricks that he could utilize to remember in that moment quickly?
Yeah.
What type of snake is that's facing him?
It's funny. Have you been in that situation?
All the time.
all the time?
Yes. 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
There's about almost 4,000 species of snakes out there.
Yeah.
So some of them are venomous, some aren't, depending on where you go.
Yeah.
So you see some animals, you're like, I don't know what that is, but I'm going to catch it.
Dude, you haven't taken the brain quiz yet?
Not yet.
Yeah. First, I would start by going to mybrainanimal.com, and it'll spit out a recipe on how you learn your best, depending on what animal type that you are.
He's a cheetah.
Yeah.
I'm an owl. I took it.
Oh, good. Yeah. For me, people ask.
I bet he's a cheetah.
Yeah, and you'll have a primary and a secondary also as well. You tend to be very intuitive, instinctive.
Very.
Yeah. It's interesting, when you think about how people could remember something, and I believe that again, there's no such thing as a good or bad brain. There's a trained brain and untrained brain. My approach towards it is I look at the hardware and the software. So the software are the processes, how to remember names, right? Some people could use a memory palace, or they could use some kind of mnemonic device, a visualization technique, some kind of story method. But you also want to make sure you keep your hardware intact also as well, right? Just taking care of your hardware will help you to be able to react faster. Because if you're not sleeping, you're not going to react your best, right? If you ate a big processed meal before you went out to explore, you're not going to, and you're in a food coma, you're not going to react at your best. If you're stressed out of your mind and preoccupied and distracted, you're not going to react at your best also as well. So some of the things that I would lean into when it comes to your hardware, when we talk about how entrepreneurs, investors could upgrade your brain, or anybody really of any age or stage, a few things that I would say lifestyle wise that lead up to that moment, because I really do believe you want to be prepared at all the times, right? So a good brain diet, which we talk about. Certain foods are just really good and nourishing for the brain. Some of my favorites that have been researched: avocados, blueberries. I like to call them brain berries. Broccoli is good for your brain. Olive oil is good for brain. Now everyone's a little bio-individual, right? Functional medicine, like go do the food sensitivity test. Eggs, if you eat eggs, choline in eggs, good for your cognitive health. Green leafy vegetables like kale and spinach. Wild salmon, if your diet allows, and sardines. Your brain's mostly fat, so you hear about those fish oils. Turmeric, cooking with turmeric, lowers inflammation, that golden powder. If you snack on things like walnuts, high in vitamin E, they kind of look like a brain, good for your brain. Dark chocolate, really good for your brain. Also as well. What's good for your mood is good for your mind. Another thing I think is really important is movement. Now, I'm preaching to the choir here, but as your body moves, your brain grooves. When you move, and I don't just mean doing like CrossFit 3 times a week, throughout the day, you create brain-derived neurotropic factors, BDNF, which is like fertilizer for neuroplasticity. So, and sometimes we're on screens all day, and they say sitting is the new smoking. So when are we taking these little brain breaks it was nice to walk around your property here. I mean, not all, the dozens of acres that are here, but, just to get fresh air and get sunlight and to move our bodies. Even when you're listening to this podcast or maybe my audiobook or something, and you're doing something rhythmic, you're going to learn it and retain it better. It'll actually boost your retention. Another thing to think about is your positive peer group. It's not just our neurological network that taps our potential. It's our social networks. You two know this so well. Who you spend time with is who you become. You hear this all the time, right? You're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. You spend time with 9 broke people, you're going to be number 10. Because we have something in our nervous system called mirror neurons. And so we're constantly imitating people around us unconsciously. And what are we imitating? Watch, WATCH. We're imitating their words. We tend to use the same words of the people we spend time with, right? And those words affect our nervous system. Actions. We start modeling, unconsciously imitating the behaviors. If your friends smoke, you're more likely to smoke because we're imitating what we see around us, like children. The T in watch, thoughts. We tend to have the same thinking patterns and thoughts as the people around us also as well. And we know those thoughts are things. They affect our beliefs and our actions. And then finally, the C and the H. The C is our character. Who we spend time with, we tend to model their integrity, their level of honesty, their level of impeccability, right? And then I read this quote, I don't know who to attribute to. They said, integrity is measured by the distance between someone's lips and their life. And you talk about this in terms of showing up on time, right? And even when you do, elevator night and when people go on and when they go off, because it's a matter of integrity, not only to yourself, but to others, right? And then finally, H, habits. We tend to model the habits of the people around us, have similar routines. And first we create our habits, then our habits create you. You create your habits of meditation or sleep prioritization or eating well or exercising, and those habits become us again. So I think it's so very important. Duke University says 40% of our daily activity upwards of is habitual. We're not even thinking about it. One of the videos we have has millions and millions of views is just like morning routines. What do you guys do in your morning to kick off your day, jumpstart your mind? What do you do in the evening to be able to wind out your day? For me, it's actually really simple. And most of the stuff you can do is free. That people don't realize it. There's a quote in Limitless from a French philosopher, and it says this: life is the letter B as the letter C between the letters B and D. Life is C between B and D. What does that mean? B is birth, D is death. What do you think life is? What does C stand for? Choice. I truly believe it's the choices. People chose to watch or listen to this right now, and their life is going to be different because they did, right? What are you choosing is to feed your mind, to feed your body, who are you spending time with, where are you going to live, your careers. All those little choices add up to big choices. And I do believe that these difficult times, if you perceive it that way, can distract you. These difficult times can diminish you, or these difficult times can develop you. We decide. We always have the choice every single day. And that's what comes back to personal responsibility. I've had this conversation with both of you guys in terms of having agency, not putting, because, then there's this, I heard Alex talk about this, talk about, where the blame goes, the power, I say it a little differently, where the blame goes, the power flows, right? You're putting your responsibility. I got to introduce, I'm going to drop a couple names here, but two of my favorites. They wanted to meet each other. Coincidentally, there was a synergy, and they both happened to be in town. It was Stan Lee and Richard Branson. And so I said, go to dinner, and I pick up Stan, and everyone knows who Stan Lee is, right? And I'm a big comic book fan. I grew up a traumatic brain injury. I couldn't read. I taught myself how to read by reading comic books. But in the car, I was like, oh, man, should I ask him? I got to know. I'm a little nervous. I asked him. I was like, I got the nerve. I stuttered. I was like, Stan, you created all of my favorite superheroes. Who's your favorite? And he said, Iron Man. Right. And he said, Jim, who's your favorite? And I was like, oh my God, there's so much shit. But he had this Spider-Man tie on that I posted on Instagram. I was like, Spider-Man. And without a pause in his iconic voice, he goes, with great power comes great responsibility. Right. And we all know that. And I tend to, what people don't know is I tend to reverse words when I read sometimes and what I hear, maybe because I had 3 head injuries before age 12 or something. And I heard something different. I was like, it's true, Sam. With great power comes great responsibility. And the opposite is also true. With great responsibility comes great power. When we take responsibility for where we are, we have great power to make things better. So instead of blaming and complaining, right? When we make excuses, we waste time, we waste energy, and nobody really cares, right? But we can't be upset by the results we didn't get from the work we didn't do, And so taking responsibility for what happens allows us to have agency and power to make things better, And so I feel like the most important thing to take agency over is what to focus on, what things mean, how we feel, as opposed to politics or the economy, or how people treat us, And I think people who do that don't have to waste a whole lot of energy, and they put that energy towards something like building their intelligence, their income, their impact.
Why is it important for people to invest into their minds, their events, masterminds, books, coaching, listening to podcasts? Why is it important to invest into their brains?
Your brain is your number one wealth building asset, bar none. We live in the age of intelligence, and attention. And when those people who are at the top of their game, they have mastered their mind. And here's the thing. When I said life is the C between B and D, C is choice, our lives are a reflection of all the decisions we've made up to this point. Where to invest, what to do for a career, how to work, what to eat, all those things. But you could only make good decisions based on the information you know at any given time, right? And so there's this gap certainly of those who have and those who have not, certainly. But there's also this gap of those who know and those who just don't know. And what I love about your podcast, and the work that you guys do on social media and different platforms is you could give people some insight and some instruction, and they know something different, so it could inform their decisions moving forward, right? And I do these programs at Google, and they'll say like, well, Jim, why do I need to remember all this? I don't know if you heard, we created the search engine.
Right.
But it's true, while that's true, at any given time, you can only make a decision based on information you know. And if you don't remember that information, you can't make a quality decision, right? And the other part of it is asking better questions. This is the thing, I talk about in Limitless that there's this idea of a dominant question where you have about 60,000 thoughts a day, and those thoughts equal things, right? The problem is 95% of those thoughts are the same thoughts we had yesterday and the day before that. So we wonder why we can't make more money, but we constantly run the same thoughts, right? And those thoughts lead to experiences that lead to actions and behaviors and feelings, and we're just repeating the cycle. And so that's why it's so hard to change. But a lot of those thoughts come in the form of questions, and I do believe questions are the answer. You have part of your brain called the reticular activating system, RAS for short, that dictates where you put the spotlight of your attention, meaning your brain primarily is a deletion device. It's trying to keep information out. Because if you let everything in, you would go insane. You would be totally overloaded. What you let in are the things that you care about, like your name. It doesn't matter. It is hardwired in your nervous system, your RAS. If you ever hear your name, somebody shout out your name, even in a crowd, even if you don't know that person, you're still instinctively going to look because it's hardwired in your RAS. One of the ways of influencing your RAS is asking questions, and asking you shall receive. And so with Peter Thiel, 0 to 1, if he has a question like, how do I hit my 10-year goal in 6 months, you're going to get different quality answers than somebody who just says, why am I broke? Or why can I never make money? Or why can't I do this? You're going to get different answers. So I would say we have a dominant question. Like my dominant question growing up was, it's like, why am I broken? But that wasn't very useful, right? Then I was like, how do I fix this? And then my question became, how do I make this better, right? I know somebody else who has a question that we did this exercise in this book, and they're like, their dominant question is, how do I get people to like me? And that's what all she thinks about all the time. And you don't know anything about her, but you probably know a lot about her. How's her personality? She's a martyr. Her personality changes depending on who she spends time with. She's a people pleaser, right? And she's a sycophant. And you know a lot about her, and you know one question. My question for all of you listening, what's your dominant question? And how can you use it to create more wealth, right? Like, I think gratitude is the foundation for good wealth. That's my personal opinion. Like, I think gratitude is riches, complaint is poverty. I really think that life is a lottery we won every single day. And life, I've heard, I've known you a long time, and that tomorrow's not guaranteed with either of you, especially when you are around,
in the jungle.
Like, yeah, exactly. Or the jungle, or the economic jungle,
or the concrete jungle.
The marketplace, right? People are coming after you as you're doing these big deals and everything else. You become a target. And when I'm here, and when we're having this conversation about this, I think gratitude is a foundation, because what you appreciate appreciates. What you appreciate tends to appreciate in life, meaning it grows. And that's the thing. If you want to feel truly wealthy, just count all the things you have in your life that money can't buy. I mean, all the things that you wouldn't trade for $1. Like you don't want to be on a beach for for all the money in the world, because you want to be in the game, right? Because it's an infinite game. It doesn't stop, right? There's no winning your career, right? Just like Simon Sinek talks about, just like there's no winning marriage, right? It's never stops, in terms of game. There's no winning health. You never get to a point where you just have it. Same thing with wealth. And so in my mind, in terms of game theory, what I'm thinking about is have a foundation of gratitude. Like, what if here's a thought experiment. And if you want to feel grateful and knowing everything comes from gratitude, because how you can have more if you don't appreciate what you have, right? What if you did this thought experiment? What if the only things you had in your life tomorrow were the things you expressed gratitude for today?
Wow.
Expressed it, not just thought about it, but expressed it. The people, if you didn't express your gratitude to those people, or your home, or the food that you're eating, or the animals at this beautiful ranch, like, you won't have them tomorrow. And you would come from a different place, right? Because you'd be supercharged by that emotion, and you know you're not separate from that. And you train your nervous system that there's enough. And that's why I believe, like, we're so aligned with the philanthropy. Like, we donated the proceeds of Limitless to charity, to Alzheimer's research for women. Women are twice as likely to experience Alzheimer's than men. And in memory of my grandmother, who passed of Alzheimer's. And also, we built schools in Guatemala, in Kenya, in Ghana, fully built a school, healthcare, clean water. We don't talk a lot, but I think the formula is you learn to earn to return, right? You learn so you could earn. The faster you can learn, the more you can earn, certainly in this economy. And then you have more to be able to return and to be able to give. And I'm preaching to the choir here, but you also, when you're doing it, it's selfish, because when you're giving back, you're training your mind, body, and spirit that there's enough, that you don't have lack. Like, my parents immigrated here. My dad was 13, lost both of his parents. We didn't come from a whole lot. Lived in the back of a laundromat that my mom, worked at. So we weren't, they weren't the most connected, certainly. They had the most wealth or education or anything. They're just really good, salty people. Very kind, did what they say, hardworking. And I realized that, at the beginning, I wanted to make my parents proud. I had these learning difficulties. I struggled for a decade and a half, and it was really hard, because I would work 3 times harder as everybody, and I would do worse in school. But I realized that now, that the things that I really was embarrassed about are the things I'm most proud of. Coming from a family, not doing the things and not having things, but just building my head injury I was so ashamed of. I thought I was broken and different. But I realized that who I want to make proud today, the 2 people, aren't my parents. God bless them. It's I want to make that 9-year-old boy, who's labeled broken. I want to make him proud every day. And I also want to fast forward, God willing, if I live to 90, I want to make that guy proud also as well. And I think that these little shifts of frame of mind and frameworks help us to keep us on point, in terms of get us to do the things that we need to do, because sometimes we need to do difficult things. Like, if you just do easy things in life, you guys know this, because life gets very hard. If you just easy things, binge watch things and don't show up for yourself and eat whatever you want, then life gets very hard, right? We know this. You hear this. You see this on social media. Being sick is hard, and exercising, eating right, is hard. You just choose your hard, right? Being broke is hard, and working smart and building a business, investing is hard. Then you choose your hard. And I think it's important that we train ourselves to do difficult things. because I think how we do anything is how we do everything. And if we get ourselves to do difficult things, we can become more resilient, which is more important now in today's world than ever.
So my grandma was in her early 90s, and every single day she would go swimming. The swimming was very short. It was out, like a lap pool at a senior citizen home called Leisure World. And she'd go back and forth, and they'd go on a walk or a bike ride, but like the 3-wheel bikes. And then she hurt her leg, so she couldn't go swimming. 2 weeks goes by, and she has full-fledged Alzheimer's.
Yeah.
And then shortly after passes away.
Sorry.
So I say that because senior citizens, and we hear about it more and more, we're learning that movement and exercise is what's keeping them active. And we watched it happen, and we forced my grandfather for years afterwards, just be active. And we got to have extra years with him because he was a very active guy. And he was teaching Yiddish until he was 93.
Awesome.
Literally teaching. Anyways, the concept I want to ask you about is movement, physical movement, and how that relates to the brain.
I love that you guys are very physically active. I think things like reading to your mind is what exercises your body, and the people that succeed, they're always moving their mind and their body. But you reach and then you rest and then you repeat, right? You can't be stretching all the time. You go to the gym and you can't be breaking down your muscles in your body all the time. You need time to recuperate also as well. But I think most people suffer from not moving enough and doing the hard work. There was a study done on longevity with the two biggest declines in people's cognitive performance is when people retire work, because they often retire their mind, and they stop, being active. And also when they graduate school, because they feel like education and learning are linked. And when you get done with your education, your learning stops also as well. But in school, it's interesting because when they cut things, they usually cut things like, playtime and physical activities. And some people learn differently in school. A lot of people learn kinesthetically, and they need to move around in order to understand what a teacher is teaching. So it's not just learning disabilities, they're teaching disabilities also. And it's funny, we punish those kids that are rowdy and everything by not letting them go out to play during recess and making them sit, and punishing them that way, which is the exact opposite of what they need. So we know that as you play, you see people say like, oh, I stopped playing because I grew older. Because remember, like as kids, you want to play, and then later on, you're like, oh, you don't use the word play. You're like, let's hang out, and you don't really play. And you're like, some people say that, and our events, we get people very playful, right? We do these things. But people say, well, I stopped playing because I grew older. I was like, no, you grew older because you stopped playing. Right. So I think that movement and that playfulness is so very important for our brain, and that's how it develops. Even children, I had a boy recently. It's our first baby. Thank you. And then, but when he's starting to crawl, that's how he develops his brain. And the primary reason you have a brain, the number one reason is control your movement. And there is a brain-body connection, but there's also a body-brain connection that as your body moves, your brain actually grooves more. Like even little things like learning how to juggle, it's using your body in different ways. There's a study done at Oxford University saying jugglers actually have bigger brains. They actually develop more white matter, and just by using their body in unique ways. And so, I definitely think it's so important when you exercise, you create brain-derived neurotropic factors, you create this flood of dopamine and endorphins, which is good for your mood, and it's certainly good for your mind. But the study done on longevity, it was on the cover of Time magazine. It was interesting. It was also about mental movement, saying these nuns were living 80, 90 and above. The study was called Aging with Grace. What a beautiful name for this study. And they found out half of their longevity was their emotional faith and gratitude, but the other half, they were lifelong learners. And because of it, it added years to their life. But not only that, life to their years. Because it's not just about growing older and having more years. It's also having a quality of life. And once you lose your physical ability to be able to move, it's a big challenge. When I spent a lot of time in senior centers because I lost my grandmother at such an early age, and helping them polish off their memories. But sometimes when they fall, and they fracture their hip or something, then it becomes very debilitating when they can't move because their brain can't get as easily engaged. One other lesson I learned from spending time in senior centers, though, helping them polish up their memories, I hear a lot of stories. I hear a lot of great experience and wisdom, which is very important, in my culture in terms of elders and the wisdom they pass on, because we all stand on shoulders of people, right? And it takes a village, is I hear a lot of regret, unfortunately, because when you're taking our final breaths, so many people have mitigated their life. They didn't date that person because what other people would think, or they pursued a career because their parents expected them to. And I would just say to anyone facing that I wouldn't take advice from someone I wouldn't take it criticism for someone I wouldn't take advice from. That if you fuel your life on other people's opinions and expectations, you're going to run out of gas. That when you're taking your final breaths in life and it's not a positive conversation, none of other people's opinions and expectations are going to matter. None of your fears are even going to matter. What's going to matter? Because you do this a lot in terms of reframing. What's going to matter is how you lived, how you laughed, how you loved, how you learned, and so why not come from that place? It's not even about time management. It's about mind management. It's about priority management. And I think the principle here is this: the most important thing is to keep the most important things the most important things. The most important things keep the most important things the most important things. And you manage the things that are valuable to you, and you begin with the end in mind.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I could do this podcast for 6 hours straight without blinking, but we can't do that because I really want you guys to listen to the full 40 minutes. We're at that mark now. Yes. So what we're going to do is we're going to forcefully beg Jim Kwik to come back to us multiple times throughout the year. We're going to drive the motorhome across the country if we have to go to Jim's house. That's really the concept of this motorhome. It's for busy guys like Jim.
This is a first for sure.
You're speaking in New York, we'll be there. You're in Miami, we'll be there. We're in Wichita, Kansas, we're going to drive over. We want to get Jim Kwik back on this episode. So make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe, share, follow Jim Kwik. It's at Jim Kwik across all social media platforms.
Everybody
Heck yeah, please.
I would love everyone who's listening to this. I think knowledge is not power; it's potential power. It becomes power when we utilize it and we apply it. And I would just say that that's where real power comes from. And I would ask everyone to take one small, simple step: is to screenshot this episode wherever you're consuming it, wherever it happens to be, and then post it. You tag the three of us on there so we get to see it. And share one thing you're going to do to have a better brain, which will lead to a better business, a better brand, and a better bank account. Like, what's one thing you're going to do for your brain? Maybe you'll prioritize sleep. Maybe you try some of those brain foods. Maybe you'll move a little bit more each day. Maybe you'll just read something or subscribe to this podcast more. Whatever it happens to be. Then your fans, your followers, your family, your friends will see it. And we'll see it because you'll tag us in it. And then I'll repost some of my favorites, and I'll actually gift a few copies of the book randomly, just as a thank you. So I appreciate the two of you so much. Dear friends, you guys are an unstoppable force for good, and a force of nature also as well.
So thank you guys. Go to themoneymondays.com. Make sure to follow The Real Tarzan, Jim Kwik. Please follow the steps that Jim just said because it's important. We want to spread the message about money, about your brain. We want people to have these conversations because it's important for our society, for our culture, for our minds, bodies, souls, and for our families and our friends. We'll see you guys next Monday.